Mark Gronowski, the South Dakota State quarterback, is visiting the University of Iowa. Is this the big fish that Iowa needs at the quarterback position? Today, Locked On Hawkeye.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. While you're there, hit that subscribe button. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Well, we got portal news today and some big one as we get ready for a little Iowa basketball. We'll talk about that a little bit later on as the Hawkeyes get ready to face off with the road trip to Wisconsin. A winnable road game for Iowa, and maybe one of the more important games, certainly of the early part here of the Big Ten slate as they make their way up to Madison. We'll talk about that. Plus, Tom Kaker is going to stop by from HawkeyeReport.com. But we start of the news of the day, and that is the visit that is happening right now with Mark Gronowski, the four-year starter from South Dakota State, who entered the transfer portal just a week ago. Now, this is a guy that we have speculated for a long time, going back to not just at the end of the season after they were knocked off by North Dakota State in the semifinals of the FCS playoffs, but even at times in the regular season. This is a guy that made a whole lot of sense. There are connections to the University of Iowa. He visited as a high school player. He is from Naperville, so has that connection. Chicago suburbs, 3 hours away from Iowa City. A lot of connections. I'm sure a lot of classmates made their way to Iowa City as well as anybody that went to Iowa knows. There's all kinds of kids from Naperville, right? But has that connection, obviously. But him as a prospect and just the way that he is. Mark Gronowski, 6'3", 230 pounds. He is a big athlete, not a plus arm, not a guy that is going to wow you in terms of downfield ability. This is not a guy that slings it around in a John Elway type of fashion, but he has the requisite arm strength. He's incredibly accurate. He has good athleticism. But the biggest thing when you're talking about Mark Gronowski, I believe, is a dude is just a winner. And he has been a winner at the collegiate level. This is a guy that when you hear people talk about him and talking to some people that have coached in the FCS ranks that know a lot about Mark Gronowski, one thing that they maintain with him, he's just going to make the right play. Big moment, nut cutting time. Mark Gronowski is the guy that came up with it. It is a jump forward. It is going to be a leap here, making the jump up from the FCS level to a place like Iowa, wherever he may end up. However, the belief is that this is going to be a guy that is going to be a very smooth transition. You couple that with doing it at South Dakota State. I mean, you look back, won national championships the last 2 years, got knocked off this year in the semifinals. But this is a guy that did it in bad weather, did it without a big undershirt on. I know it might be silly to some people, but as an offensive lineman, they always come out there in the cold weather. They're not wearing long sleeves. The quarterback, Mark Gronowski, he didn't do that either. And I think that's another component. He just has that edge that you look for. 63.5% completion percentage during his career. 93 touchdowns through the air against 20 interceptions. He has also run for over 1,700 yards in his career and has run for 37 touchdowns. This is a guy that has the components I believe you're absolutely looking for at the quarterback position for Iowa. Intangibles, physical ability. He also is going to be an NFL draft pick. At least right now, the belief is that he will be drafted in the NFL draft. So the decision is going to come down to what Iowa's going to be able to sell, what Iowa's going to be able to lay in place of him and show him the ability of what we can do now with a competent offensive coordinator, Tim Lester, taking over the reins. We saw the improvement this year of the running game, and now they have to sell to Mark Gronowski why this passing game can be fixed, why you can be the guy that's going to fix it. And with it, in turn, not only going to collect a nice check this year from the Swarm Collective, you're also going to improve your draft stock. You're going to be able to be the guy that delivers, at minimum, a competent offensive passing game at the University of Iowa that has become a laughingstock as it pertains to offensive football. You deliver that, you're going to have an even better chance of being drafted, maybe a bit higher, third round, something like that. That is what you're trying to sell right now if you are Iowa. I don't believe it's an easy sell, and there's going to be other options for Mark Gronowski. And you also do wonder. So talked about this earlier in the week. We found out that Gronowski, there was at least some murmurs, right? There's a lot out there, but you go to the big three in terms of the recruiting services. Tom Kaker, Blair Sanderson over at Hawkeye Report, part of On3. And they were intimating on the message boards that was happening, but never quite got there. And then you go over to Rivals and Elliot Clough over there. And you had the same thing at Hawkeye Beacon where it sounded like it was kind of putting out those breadcrumbs, but not breaking the news. Same thing with David Eicholt and Sean Bach over at Hawkeye Insider, part of 24/7. And until we got, now I wonder if the reason for that is we had all these breadcrumbs, all these murmurs, all these rumblings out there. If you're on the message boards, posters that are considered pretty good resources, people that usually know information before some other people, coupled with all of them, and all these people wouldn't come out and just say it, right? And didn't want to be the one to break the news. Was that because the Iowa football coaching staff wanted to keep this a little bit closer to the vest? They didn't want this getting out there. In fact, they want this to be as quiet as possible, and they want to have this wrapped up by this weekend. I think that is absolutely the best course of action. Iowa needs to come out here. This is a full court press. This is everything on the line. We're putting it all out there. And it's not just Mark Gronowski, but also coming with him apparently this weekend is his top wide receiver in Griffin Wild. So Wild this year, 71 catches, 1,154 yards, had 12 touchdowns on the year. Not only that, Wild has 2 years of eligibility. Sioux Falls kid, 6'2", 200 pounds. You also throw into the fact 18 touchdowns already in his career, had 6 of them in his freshman campaign at South Dakota State. The 2 seasons of eligibility, I was known about him in the past. LeVar Woods apparently was pushing to get him. I would offer him a scholarship. He was overturned on that one. So you have that component. I mean, we're kind of put in line here. And if all of a sudden Iowa is able to get a coveted quarterback and a coveted wide receiver, I think the conversation starts to change a little bit with this Iowa team. Now, there's still more work to be done. And we'll talk about that with Tom Kaker because it's not just these 2 guys. There is more out there. I was looking at cornerback. We know how disappointing the cornerback spot was this year. Certainly the number 2 after Jamari Harris this season. The ups and downs that we saw there, they're in there. They're being active. Look, this all comes together with the collective, the Swarm Collective. And you can donate. You can be a yearly member. You can make a one-time donation through Venmo. You can do all those different things. And you might hate it, but it is our reality. You want Iowa to be able to land Mark Gronowski, Griffin Wild. You want them to be able to go out there and improve those holes and plug in that defense. As it's constructed right now, we got to pay more. Don't like it, but it is the reality. And how you do that is you donate to the Swarm Collective. As simple as that. Let's talk Hawks with Tom Kaker. Coming up, we'll talk some football with him. On3 Media, part of Hawkeye Report, is where you can find Tom's work, and a lot going on there in the recruiting realm. We'll get into that. We'll get his perspective on Mark Gronowski visiting, and we'll talk a little Iowa basketball as the Hawkeyes get ready for their matchup against the Badgers. We'll do that as we continue Locked On Hawkeyes. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers, you can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel, so many different ways to get involved. Take a look at the matchup tonight with Iowa Hoops. They're a 6.5-point underdog against the Badgers. You can bet on Iowa to win the Big Ten regular season title at 75-1. In football, betting on touchdowns, which player is going to score a touchdown in the game, who's going to score the first touchdown, maybe multiple touchdowns. They got you covered, and a whole lot more over at FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We continue on as we're joined by Tom Kaker from HawkeyeReport.com.
Let's get to what potentially could be as big a story, Hawkeye story to break this weekend, regardless of McCaffrey's team beats Wisconsin by double digits, and that's Mark Gronowski, who the South Dakota State quarterback who's played 4 years. He's thrown 93 touchdowns in his career against 20 picks. He can run it. He can chuck it. And he's in Iowa City on a visit. What does that mean, Tom Kaker?
It it means at least that he's interested. He might have company with him. I was told that they're expecting Griffin Weil, the wide receiver who had 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns this past year. They were expecting him to be with him. So that's the rumor out in South Dakota that I was told this morning, that they were together in Iowa City, which is pretty big news. I think the big thing with Gronowski is, does he even want to play college football anymore?
Mm-hmm.
Because everything he said all season long was, yeah, I'm going to the NFL. And I think he wants to look at this option and see what it looks like. But at the end of the day, does he just want to, college isn't for everyone forever,
Yep.
And it seems like, based on what I've read, Gronowski's going to get drafted at some point. I don't know what round or anything like that. I don't claim to be an expert on that, but if he's, going to end up in the NFL and wants to just do that, then there's literally nothing Iowa can end up saying. I don't know that there's a dollar amount. Everybody's got a price, as Ted DiBiase told us one day back in the past.
Yeah.
Right?
$1 Million Man. Yeah, everybody's
$1
got a
Million
price.
Man.
That's right.
Yeah.
Ken doesn't get that reference. His wrestling goes back to Vern Gagne.
Yeah,
he goes back a little bit further.
The Butcher and Mad Dog Vachon.
There you go.
The Crusher, yeah.
The Crusher.
Take a beer on his
there
shoulder.
You go.
Yeah.
Oh,
he
boy.
died in a car wreck, didn't he? He did. The Crusher, I'm talking about.
The Crusher.
I think in North Dakota or South Dakota. I think it was in one of the Dakotas. The Crusher. Anyways, go ahead.
Does Tom? You mentioned Gronowski. Possibility NFL. The draft's going to be there. Maybe there's a dollar figure. Do we know who else collegiately is involved for his services? I saw Washington State, where his coach went. Their quarterback pulled himself back out of the portal, saying he's probably likely going to be staying there. It feels like that one's kind of coming to fruition. What other programs would be talking about with Gronowski?
Boy, I don't know. Maybe Miami.
Yeah, it should be.
After what after their backup, the way he looks, oof.
Yeah.
And they always seem to have money. And that's why I think Iowa kind of wanted to keep this under wraps as much as possible, because they wanted to see if they could get this kid
and keep him in town
and get it locked down and get it done, and without it having to turn into a bidding war with some big spender. I know Notre Dame is saying that Carr is going to be their quarterback next year, but boy, wouldn't you be interested? Wouldn't they be interested in this kid? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what Carr. I don't know. I have no idea about if Carr can play or not. But that's the theory out there, that he's next. And apparently Notre Dame only takes grad transfers. He checks that box. Gronowski does. Yep. So, boy, that's a good one. Interesting. So, Tom, timeline wise, Iowa will know when. Do you think? Do you have any idea on that?
Don't know. Don't have any idea. I think they would probably like to get it done this weekend.
Sure.
Get both those guys done this weekend and get this. But I think they'll know one way or the other. Because Gronowski does not strike me, just seeing some interviews with them, doesn't strike me as a guy who's going to kind of play games with people. Just doesn't. And I don't know exactly how many schools he'd be willing to even visit, because I think he'd want to just kind of move on to the NFL thing. But boy, if they could get both those guys, boy, what a jolt that gives the Iowa offense going into the off season. And the continued refurbishing of the quarterback room by Tim Lester.
And he gutted that thing, and now he's trying to rebuild it back up. We go through, and speaking of a lot of portaling right now, looks like Iowa remains heavily involved with cornerbacks and defensive backs as a whole. What else are you finding? I know quarterback and Gronowski is kind of the apple of everyone's eye. A lot of cornerbacks, though, and Iowa's got a couple of visits set up. Yeah,
and they've got the Thompson kid from another wide receiver from Northern Illinois coming in. They're going to just keep plugging away. But here's the thing, guys. This month, you've got to really get things done here in the next 2 weeks, because classes start, right after MLK Day. And so you're your clock is ticking, and I know a lot of guys want to find a home by then too. And there's still more guys out there than there are spots available, so it's still a good bargaining position. But you got to find guys that work for you too.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other thing. You got to guys. There's plenty of guys in the portal, but are there guys that are good enough? That's the question.
Football to basketball, Trent, you done? Let's get to the here and now. And we got a game tonight, about 5 hours. Tom Kaker, Wisconsin, depends what night you watch him, look pretty darn good. And then they lost both of their Big Ten games, correct? Yeah, they did. What do you see when you watch this Wisconsin outfit? Obviously got some dudes. That Tanjay kid is really, really good. What else do you see when you watch Wisconsin, and how does Iowa prevail in this one?
Boy, they're a lot like Michigan. They're starting 2 7-footers with Winter and Kroll.
Yeah.
And that's going to present problems. You know, it did for Iowa.
This has to be Kroll's last year, by the way, right?
He's in his 14th year, 15th year.
He's been there forever.
Yeah. He's on the Evan Ashmeyer path, I think.
Right.
But yeah, they've got to be able to handle some of that size. But Wisconsin doesn't shoot it great. They're shooting like 44% from the floor. After that great 8-0 start, they dropped 3 in a row. Both Iowa and Wisconsin have something in common in that they both lost to Michigan in close games. But the Wisconsin one was in Madison. And I'm really curious. Here's another fun fact. Wisconsin recently beat Butler, so Iowa might get a little bit of a scouting advantage.
Nice.
Because Connor and Patrick are playing for Butler. So not that Iowa needs any refreshers on Wisconsin. I think they know the personnel pretty well. But I think they'll have a good scout on this year's team, at least from Connor and Patrick on what they saw. So I think this is going to be a close game. Just always seems to be close. But boy, Wisconsin's got to have a sense of urgency tonight, because you just don't want to go down 0-3 in conference play and try and dig out of that hole.
So does Wisconsin still use the goofy ball? I remember that being a complete
a talker for a while.
They way back in the day they used like the Sterling balls that are out of order, like out of stock. Nobody makes them anymore. But do they still use the different ball? And we've heard that a couple of times from Fran, I think, in post games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I know that was a Bo Ryan thing with that other ball that they used.
Sterling.
And I'm sure Greg Gard probably keeps that going if you can. I'll be sure to check that out. Maybe I'll tweet something out. Looking at the ball tonight.
Yes.
Are you going over, Tom?
Yeah, I'm on my way there right now.
Nice. We'll see. Obviously, Owen Freeman is going to play. That came out. He's back in. What was it? Just maintenance for him?
It was. He had tweaked his ankle a little bit, and if that were a Big Ten game, against it. But they just wanted to give him some extra time and not have to worry about it and try and get that team healthy. I mean, they've had their roster where it was in some semblance of full health, maybe not fully healthy, but all the bodies. 2 games this year, 2 out of 13.
Jeez.
We saw, now it was New Hampshire, but Troy Ori finally came back, and boy, he looked really good. Really, really good. His athleticism, Tom, we talked about it before. Rebounding, that's going to be a big one. You mentioned the 2 7-footers. I think it's going to be a conversation all the time. Do we think when there are those moments when Troy Ori's playing the 4, is he a good enough rebounder for that spot in the Big Ten?
That's the big question. I think he's a pretty good defender. And,
I think so, yeah.
He averaged 8 rebounds again. It was a lower level league last year, but I think he can rebound, but he's not, Peyton Sanford is bigger than he is.
You're right.
Traor's probably, I think they list him at like 6'7" maybe, but he's probably closer to 6'5". But he plays bigger than he is. But I think that's the story tonight is they've got to keep Kroll and Winter off the offensive glass, and not let them play volleyball. Because if they can do that and get those second chance points, that's going to be the difference in the game, in my opinion. So get that defensive glass. And Iowa's got to shoot well. Iowa's shooting 51% from the floor right now, which is really incredible.
Owen Freeman's got to stay on the floor, boys. No getting 2 fouls in the first half.
Is this Mulvey time? Are we going to see a little Riley Mulvey here tonight? 2 7-footers out there. I think he's shown at minimum he needs to play before Evan Bronze.
I think so too. I think Mulvey's done. He's been more than serviceable this year, and I think they could certainly use him, and especially if they haven't given up a lot of fouls. Because then you can just, if he gives up 2 fouls quick, you're not hurt. You're not putting a guy to the line that might make a couple free throws. So as long as they're not in the bonus, I think it's okay to put him out there and let him play.
Yep. We're going to have to get Peyton Sanford going. He needs to, and he's been fine. Don't get me wrong. He's been fine, but this is senior year, and I think you need a little more from him. Tom, is that unfair?
No, that's not unfair. He just hasn't shot it well, and it's been that, the shoulder issue, and he had the wrist issue at the Washington State game. He's been maybe the most banged up guy on the team next to Josh Diggs. And to me, tonight, I think this is a game where they really need a big Josh Diggs game. I think he's got to match up with the Tanjay kid and just and get 20 points and win that battle. And if he does, Iowa's got a shot at winning that game.
So one other question about tonight. And so you got Kleshmidt, who's back for another year, Blackwell, who played a little bit for him last year. They're both pretty big guards, 6'4". Both of them are pretty thick, and they like to post them up. I mean, is that a concern when you got the backcourt of Thelwell and Brock Harding?
Yeah, and not as much with Thelwell, because Thelwell's solid and he's strong, and he's probably about 6'2", 6'3", so I think he's okay, but you can bet they're going to try and get some of those the little swing things where they get the guards down there in the block, and they'll post up Brock and try and go after him. So, but Brock's tough. He's going to have he's going to have to see if he can hang with those guys. Here's the other thing: Wisconsin, they're not that deep. They're like 6, 7 deep this year, and Iowa, at full strength can go 9 deep, and I think feel pretty comfortable about it. So that may be a big thing tonight if Iowa can get Wisconsin in some foul trouble.
Got to steal some of these on the road. This is an opportunity to do so tonight. In our final couple of minutes, Tom, we haven't spoken with you since Nashville. I guess just put a bow on that. And when it comes to Gronowski, let's say he is a Hawk. Obviously, Hank Brown is as well. What are the two incumbents? What do we see from Sullivan? What do we see from Stratton? I know there's still another window after spring ball that they could, ultimately decide to that this isn't going to work out. What's the quarterback room going to look like?
Good question. If Gronowski gets in there, then you go on Sullivan watch, I would guess. But he said down in Nashville, he's like, look, they communicate with me on all this stuff, and they let me know nothing's been a surprise to me, and it's okay. I like competition. I came here for competition. So at least on the surface, it seems like it's okay with it. So we'll see. And I don't know that they would just hand anybody the job. I think they'd have them compete, and then that window opens up in the spring, and you'll have a good idea about who the starter is going to be, I think, or at least who the top 2 are going to be at the end of spring ball.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff, Tom Kaker. Appreciate you doing this as always. We will talk to you next Friday. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Good to talk to you. Tom Kaker. Tom will be in the building tonight. You Hawkeye Report subscribers. You'll have a reporter on the scene. Tom Kaker, part of On3 Media, HawkeyeReport.com.
Attending the new 12-team college football playoff games is an incredible experience that brings fans together like never before. I remember the excitement of past bowl games, and I can't wait to make new memories with the updated format and extra teams involved. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I used Game Time Picks to find tickets for a big game. Browsing through the deals was a breeze. I found great value on all kinds of seats all around the venue, and the Super Deal in particular stood out as the best value for the event. I love that you can see your seat views before buying and that the app shows you the total cost upfront. No more surprise fees at checkout. Plus, the on-time delivery of your tickets and the lowest price guarantee gave me complete peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Trent Condon back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Well, let us get ready for the matchup tonight on the hardwood up at the Kohl Center. Talked a little bit about this with Tom Kaker from HawkeyeReport.com. Iowa projected to be a 4-point dog in this one by Ken Pom. The point spread right now at FanDuel has the Hawkeyes a 6.5-point underdog in this matchup. Now we know the Kohl Center, there has been issues of the past, but this Wisconsin team, one thing that they're playing at a much higher pace than they normally do. Tempo, middle of the pack in the country at 181. That is something that historically they have not exactly played at the quickest pace all time, though it has been a little bit different. But you just go back to the last couple of seasons, they were in the 300s in terms of tempo. They've been much more efficient, though, offensively this year. This is a team under Greg Gard that has been better on the offensive end of the floor. And Tajay is the guy that you really have to worry about. Certainly overall, an ability to get to the basket, really good pull-up game. And he's been one of the few guys that have been hitting three-pointers this year, 37% from beyond the arc. However, as a team, they're not shooting very well. And a change for this Iowa team this year, they've been much better defending the three-point line than they have been in the past. I think it's going to come down to rebounding. I mean, that you look at a key to the game, and it's not that Iowa has to win the rebounding battle, but they can't get bludgeoned. You go back to the loss to Iowa State. That was a huge component of the game. Iowa State's ability to get so many of the rebounds on the defensive end of the floor, but then they also added 18 offensive rebounds in that one. Iowa needs to hold Wisconsin probably in the single digits in terms of offensive rebound and keep it relatively close. You know, if you get beat by 4, 5, 6 boards, something like that, I think you're going to be in really good shape. Tom brought up the lack of depth for this team. We'll see how quick Iowa wants to play. And finally, Iowa about as healthy as they've been all season long, using their depth to their advantage. I think that's going to be another component. And what's Josh Dick's going to be able to do defensively against Tajay? That's another one to keep an eye on. And Owen Freeman, got to stay out of foul trouble. Can't pick up those ticky-tack ones if you're going to go into this game. And for a team that has struggled from behind the arc this year, this is a game I think you're coming with more drop coverage. Defensively, Owen Freeman, instead of that hard hedge, a lot more drop coverage out of him. And you know what? If you see a couple of times that Kroll's going to knock down a three-pointer over top of you, you throw up your hands and say, so be it. He's 5 of 21 from behind the arc this year. He is not a great shooter overall. He can knock down an open one. He got to be there, but I think drop coverage makes a whole lot of sense. Even him and Winter, who's a better three-point shooter of both those guys. I think that's the way you're certainly going to want to play this one. Should be a good one coming up as we look forward to it. I'll be back with you with an instant reaction podcast. I'll back with you on Friday evening after it goes final, and we will get you some thoughts on that one. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Go Hawks.